Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to Aquarius Rising Africa. And I really hope you are all still here because super late today. I'm so sorry. That is all my own doing. And I take full responsibility for that. Had a slight emergency, all sorted out now, but I'm here. Welcome, everybody. Happy Tuesday, not Monday. It's Happy Tuesday today. And a wonderful new guest in the lineup this week, and definitely for a couple of weeks to follow as well. Lynne Haggerman, who is going to be speaking to us on her journey. I'm actually just going to read you a little bit about Lynne in her bio. Survivor, whistleblower, and investigative broadcaster whose early childhood was spent inside a regional trafficking house before being forced into institutionalized crimes against children, including government-linked experimentation at a US university medical center through declassified MKUltra and mind control programs. This is where we see how we understand, children have been abused, invariably are forced into doing some very crazy and hectic things against other children as well. We're going to hear about that from Lynne today. But before we go any further, I'm just going to bring up this week's schedule. And right. 4 o'clock today, always at 4:30 today, Lynne Haggerman, and we're going to be hearing her story. Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock Central Africa time, bright and early. And I know lots of you Amerikaners will be sleeping at that time. But for those of you who are awake, join me with Dr. Jörg Prince, brilliant doctor, ex-medical doctor that's moved into the natural field. And we're going to be talking about men's health tomorrow. So I think so many men in their health, gets overlooked, the stresses that men bear and how it affects their health as well. We hear so much about women and women's health, but I think often men are forgotten. And wow, I've seen so many men over the years pretty much have premature illnesses, if you want to call it that, because of stress and pushing themselves to keep up with the Joneses, so to speak. So let's listen to what Dr. Jörg Prince has to say about that. And then, of course, tomorrow, Jesse, Double Trouble with Jesse, 1:30 and 3:30 Central Africa time. We're going to be looking into and decoding art. So when we look at all this art stuff, what's the symbolism? What's the hidden messages? How are they using art in the system? So very interesting decode tomorrow. Join us for that. And then on Thursday, yay, starting a new series on solutions. So if you guys have just joined me for the 14-week protection patterning series, where we understand how we've created our own protection patterns in order to survive in life. And once we start dismantling those protection patterns, because at some point they're no longer protection, they now become your cage, right? So dismantling that, understanding your protection patterns. And now the next series is the mirror universe. So how does that which surrounds us and the relationships we have and the experiences we create, because we do, how is that showing us what is happening within us? So I always say, if it's happening in your life, it's because something in you needs to have a mirror, or it's something that you attract, right? So how do we start seeing that? So that's what this series is about. So join me for that, 3 o'clock Central Africa time on Thursday. Drop in with Shanti. And for those of you who didn't watch on Friday, catch that show I did. It's called When the Monster Changes Faces. Really focusing on what's happening in South Africa at the moment. It's kind of reverse apartheid. apartheid no longer with a white face, but apartheid now with a dark face, and how South Africans are literally kicking out any foreign immigrant, whether they're legal or illegal. It started off with being illegal, but now it's absolutely, it's had such a knock-on effect where the rest of Africa is now shutting down businesses that are South African-owned businesses. It is crazy what's happening in Africa right now. But what I'm doing is I'm actually doing an entire decode from long before the colonization of Africa, when the VOC or the Dutch East India Company came here and settled in Africa, when the first colonizations began. And I've thread that throughout, how the cabal works, what their network in Africa is, how they came here, how they're infiltrating our schools, how they're infiltrating our churches. And yeah, so there's going to be a whole lot of that with Drop In with Shanti. And it's not just relevant to Africa or South Africa. I'm showing you how the entire world has got the sick tentacles in everywhere, and how South Africa is the gateway to the New World Order, and how they're using us. They've been using us as guinea pigs here for the longest time, and how this is being reflected in the rest of the world now. If we can see that, if we can see how they're operating, and I have, because I've been able to connect those dots, or a lot of them, then we can dismantle the system by seeing what they do. So please join me for that. That's like super interesting. And then, of course, Friday night, yay, Guy Anderson again. What are we talking about? I can't remember, but Guy's always very interesting. So join me for that. He's the guy on Tartaria, expert on Tartaria, the Cabbage Patch Kids, human cloning, all sorts of things. And unfortunately, my internet was playing silly buggers on Saturday this week, so we didn't get to do Jerry Marzinski last week, but he's on this Saturday again. Our mental health expert, Dr. Jerry Marzinski. Join me for Saturday at 6 o'clock South African time. And then, yes, the recording on Solutions, actually, on with members, Patreons, the book club. And that's going to be from Jesse, last month's one, actually. And then, of course, Sunday afternoon, Sunday Loop, where we're playing reruns of previous shows or shows that have not been, excuse me, aired yet. So, yay. Now, finally, let me just take this thing off. And I can bring Lynne on. Ta-da. Lynne, welcome to Aquarius Rising Africa. So happy to have you. Yeah, how are you?
I am doing wonderful. It is so happy to be here. I am so honored to be speaking to your audience. And I love your guest lineup this week. I've had Jessie on my show a few times, and I know she's such a regular on yours. She's such a sweet, sweet woman.
Jessie is amazing. You know, she's such a wealth of information. And anyone who has been watching this channel knows that, well, it's pretty much, I started this channel because I'd heard Jessie speak to David Zublik. And I was like, what the hell am I hearing? I mean, I'd heard about a whole lot of other stuff before that, but I wasn't connecting the dots nearly. And I've always known, of course, this is a corrupt world. Excuse me. And then, of course, listening to Jessie's testimony, and just over the years, sitting back and just learning from survivors, learning from Jessie, because her decodes, they are supreme. They really are. You're never going to get information from anyone else, like especially, let's just talk about her decodes, because she's such a brilliant decoder. You know, the way she decodes the churches, the sigils, the landmarks. It's absolutely phenomenal. And she comes from such a knowledgeable place as well. Well, I'm glad you've interviewed her. Yay.
Yes, yeah. Yes,
That's
yes,
so nice.
which is how I first heard about your show.
Oh, right, right. Oh,
Exactly.
wow.
So, yeah, so I am honored and really thrilled to be here. And even our conversations we've had, off air, it's just a joy to meet you.
And likewise, it really is. And I watched some of your stuff as well. So it was really good to see you,
Good. Thank
when
you.
when we first had our meeting.
Yeah.
But I would love to hear, because I know there's, when I look at survivors like yourself who've been through hell, literal hell. And I mean, there's
Yes.
a couple of you I work with. I mean, every survivor is incredible in the way. I mean, I don't know how you guys have survived. I really don't. But bless you and thank you for still being here. And more than anything, I always say, that you can come out after being through all of that horrific stuff and still have so much love and compassion and kindness and actually have the desire to want to make someone else's life better. Yet there was no one there when you needed it to make your life better. And I can always respect that. And I love that because, it just shows who we are
Mm.
when that's part of your journey. So thank you for that.
Thank
And I know
you.
it's never easy to speak about these things. So I'd love you just to share whatever you feel comfortable sharing. And yeah, I'll chime in whenever I have a question. And if you guys have any answers, or sorry, not answers, questions, or maybe answers, who knows, you can just pop them up in the chat. And if we have time at the end, I'll just pop them. I'll ask Lynne if she has time. So, yay. Tell us about your journey. How did it begin for you?
I'll start at the beginning. With When I was born, I was trafficked from the time I was born until I was 5 years old at a regional trafficking house. My mother's the one that sent me. Generational pedophilia runs deeply on her side of the family. And she hated me from the time I was born until the day she died. And the reason why is she was jealous because my dad loved me and he didn't love her. And why people come out of generational pedophilia harming others and why some don't, I'll never know. But she came out verbally and emotionally abusive and hated me. So she willingly, intentionally sent me to both the trafficking house and the university, knowing exactly what was happening to me. At the same time, my dad was an alcoholic and a workaholic. He was never home. So he presumed that mom was taking care of me when she wasn't. So every day I would be sent to the trafficking house. And it was ran by an ex-military man who is completely insane. I describe the trafficking house as a POW camp because I relate completely to vets. As a matter of fact, if you look at brain research, the brain of a little one who's been harmed as significantly as I was, or even less, their brains are identical to vets who've just come back from a combat war. Identical. And
Wow.
identical, yes. So
Wow.
yes.
Hang on. That is something really important, which I want us just to let that land for a minute. Because a child between the age of 0 to 5, when you scan her brain, who's been through trauma the way that you have, violence, abuse, neglect, has the same brain scan as a military guy who's come out of high level military combat. And that is obviously got high levels of PTSD.
Yes.
That is wild.
Yes.
Can you imagine what that child must go through? Not for 1 second do you know when the bullet is going to hit you.
That's right.
Wow. Sure.
That's right. That's right. I'm here on earth, my purpose is to be a voice for the little girl in me who survived that, and to be a voice for the little ones that she helped survive. And most of all, to be a voice for the many, many little ones that I saw that did not survive. And I am the voice for the voiceless. And when the Lord activated me, I've been in deep healing for a long time. And when the Lord activated me to speak in January of 2024, before that, I knew one day he would have me doing shows like this. Well, I didn't think doing shows. I thought I'd be in teeny tiny churches with 10 members, and I would hide and give my testimony, and then I'd run and hide again. I didn't know he'd give me this big platform. But anyway, when I was trying to figure out, how to share this from a little one's standpoint, one of the many ways I try to describe this is it is like a POW camp, because it's so important for adults now to understand what's happening to the little ones so that we know what to do to help. And I think that that's one of the missing pieces, is the understanding. You will never hear me use the phrase child sex trafficking. I won't use the word sex, because I speak for the little ones, and they have a zero comprehension of what that word means. Absolutely none. And that's a word with adult connotations. And the enemy has infiltrated the narrative and put that word in to bring us today to the UN Agenda 2020 or 2030, where they're saying that children can consent to sex. And that's been a deep state plan coming for years, because they dropped the word in that doesn't even remotely describe what's happening. And now they can try to groom children.
I want to ask you specifically about that, as someone who's been part of those horrors. We understand that pedophiles are very seductive, right? They are very skilled at seducing kids in whichever way they can, right? Whether it's with words, whether it's with candy, and they would obviously know exactly where to stimulate a child. So at what point do they say a child consents? Because an innocent child, I mean, I was a child that never ever had that. I mean, as a kid, you don't even think about that. It's like, what do you see your mom and dad kissing, and you want to throw up. You go, oh no, that's gross.
That's right.
It's like not even something.
That's right.
You contemplate. The norm, I mean, in my understanding from how I grew up, I had 3 older sisters, and I just remember them telling me somewhere when I was like maybe in my early teens, they were lecturing me. You don't ever get drunk if there's a boy around. You don't ever this and you don't ever do that. And I mean, they read me the riot act. So my older sisters absolutely told me all about the dangers of boys, right?
Right.
But at what point, this is what I'm saying, because in a normal type of development, you don't even think about sex. It's not even something that you think you're going to get offered, let alone have your father or someone do that to you. That is just unheard of. And I can honestly say no one that I know has had that happen. In my community, I'm not saying it didn't. None of my friends, none of my people in our neighborhood had that. So this I haven't heard of. It wasn't even something we spoke about. And I repeat that because I want to make it clear that in a normal environment, that is not even discussed until you maybe start going through puberty. So how do they, and what do they do to say that a child is able to consent to sex when they are 7 or 8 or 10 years old? I'm trying to understand what they do to get a child to say yes.
So the child never says yes. And what I want to start with is these are heinous crimes against humanity. There is no statute of limitations in the United States, at least, on these heinous crimes against the children. Children are not able to consent until they're 18 years old minimum. And consent is something, so I love to clarify terminology. You had, asked initially, how do they seduce the children? So seduce isn't even part of the vocabulary. That gets back to the concept of sex. And the perpetrators, the pedophiles, they are evil people, and they want to harm children. Sex has nothing to do with it. It's all about control and torture. They enjoy the physical and mental torture of children. And I saw that over and over and over again from their faces. Sex has nothing to do with it for them either. They like to torture children, and they love to see their faces in torture, because it is something that they enjoy. We will never understand them because we don't think like them. And so they don't seduce children. What they do is they start approaching them, like maybe candy, like you said, whatever they're going to do. But then when they cross lines, the child knows everything that's happening is wrong. But the child also knows, especially when they're tiny like I was, you're tiny. And there is no way that you can go up against an adult and stop them from doing whatever it is they're going to do to you. There's no way. And so you're put in a situation, even if you're, 8, 9, 10, 12, unless your family has taught, like you have, unless your family's taught you what to do, you have no idea what to do with these heinous, evil pedophiles that come at you. And children think of them like the other adults in their life, that they're there to care for them and love them. And of course, I never had that, but, and they're there to take care of them. So when the pedophiles keep pushing, the child is in a situation that no child should ever be in. They have no idea how to react and what to do, but they're fully aware that everything that's happening is wrong. And even whenever I was an infant, 2 years old, 1 year old, I knew everything happening to me was absolutely wrong. And yet I also knew that I was powerless. I was completely powerless to change anything that they were doing. Now, the Agenda 2030, as we know, the world is run by pedophiles. The elites are horrific pedophiles, and they are trying to change terminology and laws in order to be able to torture and harm children. And by the way, you're about ready to meet Gracie the cat. So she
looks just like my kitty.
Yes, she is. Yeah. So she, I call her my co-host because she'll come in on shows and she's family, so I don't lock her away anywhere. And she'll just come in and join the show. And I have a website that I show, the qgrit.org. It's my ministry website, where I list all the ways that I've healed and become the sane, rational woman you see before you today. One of them is have a pet. So that way you can experience unconditional love, because people with my background, I had no idea what unconditional love was until I got a pet.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And preferably not a cat, though. Cats can be so snobbish. So I would say definitely a dog, unless you have a super duper loving cat. I mean, my cats will sit on me, and then if I dare move, they'll growl at me. They take over the full electric blanket side of the bed, and if I try and kick them off, they growl at me. So, but no, I fully agree. A pet, wow. I have worked with people with addictions, and I'm just saying, and I'm not even talking about extreme abuse, just addictions when they're overcoming drugs and stuff like that. I always say, get a dog, a little dog, and boy, does it work. Every situation I've seen that in 100%, because that little animal takes the role of everything you love. You pour your love into it. It pours its love back to you. It is so non-judgmental, except a cat.
So Gracie is all love, as you could see. So aren't you, honey? Yes.
Oh,
She
you're
loves
so
doing shows
sweet.
with me. She has a similar background. When I got her from a rescue center, and when she was a baby, as soon as she was born, her and her siblings were, before they even got a drink from their mom, they were put in the woods to, and I'm going to spell now because she's smart. They were put in the woods to DIE and left there helpless. And some kind person rescued them all and put them in the rescue center. And then I got Gracie. So she's been through a lot of trauma too. And we're just kind of kindred souls in that sense. And how I love on her is how children need to be loved on whenever they've been harmed, and how they can receive love too. So she's like a shining example of little ones.
Wow. That is amazing. And it's true that you say that, because you're often going to find animals who've been abused as well
Yes.
will be such a good match for
Yes.
people who've been abused, because as you say, you get each other. You
Yes.
get each other.
Yes. Yes.
You,
I completely do. I completely do.
yeah.
So yeah, Gracie will be here for a while, but with all the shows, she's so sweet. She has learned to punch buttons. So if she gets too close, she's kicked me off shows before. So if she gets too close to the keyboard, I'll have to put her down. That's why I call her my little co-host. But yeah.
That's so cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
She's going to get comfortable, hopefully. Or maybe she'll just be a co-host for a while.
I'm interested to hear, you were talking about your mom. If you wouldn't mind just reversing a little bit there. It's
Yes.
interesting that the roles were reversed, because usually you have the dad who's the main abuser, while the mom is kind of oblivious to what's going on, either hypnotized or drugged up or turned into some kind of an alcoholic that just can't function. I've heard a lot of those kind of stories from survivors as well, or the mother's actively involved. In fact, there's only one other, who's Chris Latera, and I think you've been on a show.
Yes.
Yes, and his mom, when he was young, sold him into the CIA.
Yep.
And it's interesting, and I don't believe her role was as active as what your mom's was in terms of that, but I think they most definitely used his mom to do their dirty work for sure. So can you maybe take us to some of the stuff that you experienced with your mom per se? It's always difficult for me to hear that moms do these things on their own volition. But I also think it's important to understand that it's not really your mom doing that, right? It might be her body, but probably some other nasty entity working through your mom. Maybe you can help us understand the difference and how you dealt with that.
Yes. Yes, sure. So because mom was so badly harmed when she was little, that messes people up, for lack of a professional way to say it. And it just, it causes, frankly, most people who come out of that commit suicide. They're in long-term mental institutions. They're drug addicts, alcoholics, end up in prison. So it significantly harms people. So I'll start out with that. And what she would do is, because she hated me, she wanted me harmed, and I know was hoping that I would not make it. So she sent me to the trafficking house knowingly and willingly every day. She was
when
not.
You say the trafficking house, explain the trafficking house. Was this something for kids? What was the trafficking house? What happened there?
It was for kids. The kids that I saw, there would be babies up until probably 5, 6, 7 years old. They were little ones. And the customers, it was ran by the insane ex-military person. His daughter and son-in-law also lived there, as did his wife. And his daughter had several children that lived there. And the customers included law enforcement, people in religious garb, medical people, businessmen, businesswomen, and just regular everyday people, politicians, and those were the customers. And some children were there long-term, like me, trained from the time that they were born, and some were brought in and either didn't make it or were removed. Most of the ones who were brought in that didn't grow up there, being trained to survive this, they just didn't. And some of them would, I'm trying to see how much to, so the people who lived there, cannibalism was practiced. So when they get a hold of babies, there would be that sort of thing. And then the children, I mean, we were customers. And so whatever it was that these heinous, evil people wanted, we were trained to do. And if we didn't, and they use torture to train the children, because children would never do anything that we were required to do ever. But it's like again, I equate it to a POW camp. When people from the military are in POW camps, they have zero control. They're fed whenever the people want them fed. They're given water. At any time they can be tortured mentally, physically. They sleep when they're told to sleep. I mean, you have absolutely zero control. And if you want to survive, you have to figure out a way to cope and live in that type of an environment, or you don't survive. So many of them didn't. And the ones who weren't, when you're trained, you're emotionally and physically tortured to where you fully understand what the expectations are, or else they can always come up with the most horrific, creative ways to torture children, including ending their lives. And they were fully capable of that. I saw it so many times. So you're in survival, which is why our brains come out like combat vets, because you're in a war. You're in a perpetual war. And the children that didn't make it, they weren't trained. So they'd come in, and I presume they were likely kidnapped. Maybe the parents sold them, but they come into this and they have no idea how to cope with being physically and mentally tortured 24/7. And some of them just died because they just gave up. Some, of course, were executed, and some were unintentionally killed. But that's what it was like all the time.
Wow. Was it? I mean, if you say you went there every day, to me, it would sound like a daycare center kind of thing, right? You take your kids there and pretend you're going to daycare, and then this is the kind of stuff that goes on there. So it sounds like it was quite an established thing. It wasn't just a center where you drop kids. It was actually probably a whole lot of underground tunnels and activity going on there as well. Wow, that's insane.
So when it comes to underground tunnels, I'm not sure. I still have Gracie fur on here, cat hair still flying around here. So when it comes to underground tunnels at the trafficking house, I don't remember that. Now, of course, memories still come, so who knows, that's possible. Now, at the university, though, there were extensive underground tunnels. And I also have memories of the DUMS, too, the tunnel system there. So there are tunnels, and the tunnels are worldwide. I was in a tunnel one time that took me to Paris because I knew I was in Paris. So those tunnels are very real. Were they at the trafficking house? Likely, but I don't, frankly, have a memory of that. But they did do extensive torture in the basement, including having an adrenochrome harvesting room. So likely there were tunnels.
You say you were there from the age of 0 to 5.
Yes.
What happened after that?
It was very simple. I was not rescued. My dad, who I mentioned was an alcoholic, he, in his alcoholistic state, met another woman, decided to leave my mom, start a whole new life with the other woman. and it was a divorce. And so we moved far away, and to where my grandmother lived, which would be my mom's mom. And my grandma had absolutely no idea what was going on, absolutely none. And when we moved to her town, I was far enough away to where, of course, I wasn't sent to the trafficking house every day. And since that was the feeder system to the U.S. university I was sent to, that stopped. Now, I know since then, I've had different people, I'll say, following me or observing me over the years, because I was considered a very valuable asset. But I was far enough away to where that stopped. Now, until the last few months, the neighbor where we moved to was a pedophile in his 80s. And so my mom required me to go there every day. And she would be a few feet away in the house smoking cigarettes and drinking her coffee while that continued. And then one day I said something, and I didn't know if she'd make me go back or not, because I spoke up once to her whenever I was little with the trafficking house. And she marched me back and told them that I was speaking and they better do something about it. And the torture that I survived, it's amazing that I'm even speaking now. Absolutely amazing, because I had that tortured out of me. But then once I spoke up about the neighbor, then she realized that I was old enough, and if she didn't stop it, she would be going to prison. So it stopped then and there. And I still remember, Chantel, 5 years old, standing in my backyard, feeling freedom. And I just, I'm going to say, a 5-year-old little girl should never, ever, ever be able to feel what it's like to be free. That is wrong on so many levels. But for me, it was astounding to finally know I was free, and I never had to go back to any of that again. Praise God.
Wow. And that was because your mom cottoned on that she couldn't, and that stopped at the age of 5.
Yes.
And that was after your dad had left her.
Yes.
So your dad left, married someone else, but left you with her without realizing
yes,
what he was doing.
Yes.
Wow. And after that, how was it for you with her?
So when that happened, as your other survivors have, I'm sure, talked about, God in his grace and mercy gave me amnesia. And I forgot 95% of my childhood. I remembered 5%, but forgot the rest, until I could get to a safe place in my adult life. And I describe it that God kept my memories, in the palm of his hand until it was time for me to remember. But I always knew something was seriously, seriously wrong with me my whole life. I had no idea what it was, because I didn't have that many memories. But I was a straight A student. I was an overachiever. That's who they pick for MK Ultra, are people who are very brilliant. I have a high intelligence level. And so I started performing, and I was a leader. I led clubs. I led organizations. I led other children. I had my first business when I was 4 years old. I've had several businesses since. I own businesses now.
4 years old?
4 years old, I started my first business. I had my first nonprofit by the time I was 8.
Doing what? How fascinating.
Well, so when I was 4 years old, this is how that worked. I wanted candy. I wanted candy. And I knew that my mom could not take care of me, that she was incapable. And I saw, when we go to the store, that people would have coupons that they clipped from magazines, and they would get things for them. So I found magazines at my grandma's house and started clipping. And I went to the local convenience store, and this man is in heaven today. I know it. And he looked at me. So pictures, so 4-year-old girl coming in with her little coupons, asking for candy in exchange. So he took my little coupons and he let me pick whatever candy I wanted. And it was behind, I'll never forget it. It was behind a piece of glass, and it was just like heaven. And so I picked my candy, and I didn't I didn't pick that much because I wasn't used to having. So it's not like I was like, give me everything in the store, because I wasn't used to having anything. And so he'd let me take my candy, and that was my first little business. And then when I realized that that's how things worked, then I started writing plays, and I would charge neighborhood kids to come and watch the plays. And then I earned, a nickel here. And then when I was 8 years old, I decided to start a not-for-profit because my heart. So who I am remained intact, and to this day, I have a not-for-profit, myqgrit.org. I have several businesses, but I started my not-for-profit because I'd seen someone with MS and my heart just broke. My heart's very tender toward people. And so I thought, we need to raise money. So I created a carnival in my backyard, and actually the local media came and covered it. And I raised money for MS. And this has been who I've been ever since. It's who I, so, they can harm us, but they can't take who we are.
Exactly.
I am who I am. And what I survived doesn't define me. It makes me stronger and more determined, frankly.
Absolutely. I think that's amazing. And it's so often I hear stories from survivors like yourself, and it really is the survivors who have the strongest light, right?
Mm.
And they really do try and invert that and steal that from you. I mean, it's wild. What were you groomed for? I mean, obviously you had some special abilities that they were after. What was that in you that they were after?
So at a primal level, I was being groomed for pedophiles. I mean, being groomed for pedophiles, to give pedophiles pleasure, if I can use that word. Although I really hate using words that denote sex of any kind. When they torture children, they like it. I'll put it that way. So I was being trained for that. Simultaneously, my gifts, I'm a leader. I have always been a leader. It's the way that God made me. And I was a leader of the children. So I know that that's hard for people to probably grasp. But by 3 years old, I was the leader. And I was there to guide the children, direct them, help them with their training, so that way they could survive. And I knew all of this was heinously wrong, but I also knew I wanted to survive, and I wanted them to survive. And so I would do my very, very best to help them learn how to not die. And some of them I was able to help. Frankly, most of them I was not, because I was only 3. Other gifts that I had, and these are gifts that were mine. It's nothing that they did to me or made or created for me. These are gifts that I had from God at birth. And that included remote viewing, time travel, being able to understand what animals think, plants. I have all kinds of gifts that were always mine, but they wanted to study those. And
right.
They did not make them grow. They had nothing, like my strength. I was born with that. It's how I survived. It's part of who I am, and all those gifts. And I believe that so many people have these sorts of gifts. It's just they've been taken out of us. I think one of the primary tools is a Department of Re-education. But so I have many, many gifts. Also simultaneously, both in the house and in the lab, I would see God Almighty there all the time. I would see the Lord Jesus Christ. I would see angels everywhere. I would see demons everywhere. I went to heaven all the time, and those things are still true today. I still go to heaven on a regular basis. I still time travel. I still see God. I still see angels. I still see demons. And those are my gifts and talents too, because I know how to command angels, and I know how to bind and get rid of demons, which is what we need for such a time as this.
Absolutely. It's wild. So How did you eventually, at what point, well, talk us through how it was for you after moving, coming out, and not having to go to the trafficking house every day. You lived further away. But if I remember correctly, did you say your mom still had neighbors or something
Yes.
that were, and
Yes.
how long, and at what point did that stop?
So the neighbor who was a pedophile, that stopped at 5 years old when I spoke up. And then
Right.
at that time, I entered the regular school system here in the United States. Again, at that time, my grandmother was here. And so I got to feel love for the first time ever. And that was from my grandmother. And again, she had no idea what had happened, what I'd been through, any of it. And so she made my mom, life became, I'm going to put in air quotes, normal as I think other people have. So there would be, I'd go to school, I had clothes, I had food, because I wasn't fed when I was little at all. I was denied food. And if I got anything, it was milk for the first 4 to 5 years of my life. To this day, I have a lot of problems with food. I have to be really careful. But again, it's like a POW camp. You get what you get. And it was very, very little to survive. So there was food, and I had clothes, and I got to go to school and excel and perform. I really enjoyed that. And then my grandmother, it was Christmas and there were birthday parties, and we would go to church. And I think that's pretty much what normal people are like. Now, when I became a teenager, I became an alcoholic, and that changed everything. Well, at the same time, straight A student. I went on to college. When I was a tiny girl, God told me he wanted me to get my master's degree. And I didn't know what that was, but I was always more than willing, and still to this day. I love knowing God's will for my life, and I love jumping in and doing it. It's the best place to be. And so I told him when I was little, I would get a master's, even though I didn't know what that was. So I do. I have a master's degree now. And then I started my first business many years ago. I've had several businesses since. I'm an international award-winning human resource consultant. I'm a published author. I'm a marathoner. I'm a weightlifter. And I have several businesses and my nonprofit. So that's who I was, and that's, who I am. And then the healing journey started several years ago with the first repressed memory. And I have been in recovery ever since. I work very, very, very hard at my recovery, and still do. And I'm not sure actually that will ever stop. It's getting easier as I'm remembering, as I'm healing more and more, but there's a lot there.
When did your memory start surfacing, and what was the trigger for that, or the catalyst?
So it was a few years ago, and I was just putting my makeup on in my bedroom at my makeup mirror. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, was the first repressed memory. And I remember being in my crib, and I remember being molested. I can tell, these repressed memories, they're photographic. And it's like, my best way to describe it to people, combat vets, when they have flashbacks, it's the same thing, because again, our brains are wired identically. So it's a flashback. And vets will tell you the same thing. They'll forget a lot of what happened, and then the flashbacks start. So my first repressed memory or flashback, I was in my crib, and I was probably 9 months old, maybe 6 months old. And I can tell you the color of his shirt, the pattern in his shirt, the size of his buttons, the color of his buttons. And when you go back in time, I can tell you what my crib looked like, the sheets. It's not just your vision, it's all of your senses. So my body was in my bedroom where I live now. By now I was a heaping puddle on the floor, but started out at my, makeup table. And I could tell you the sounds, the smells. I can tell you the feelings. So your whole body, your body goes back in time to all the pain, all the physical pain you experienced at the time. And then your mind goes back to the terror and the horror and all of the emotions and feelings that went charging through you at that time. And I mean, I dropped to an absolute puddle in the floor. I was a mess for a long time. And later that day, I had someplace to be. So I was in my car and I was driving along and I was pretty upset with God. And I was talking to him. I was not happy about this. And I told him, I said, you know what, God, I could have lived a lifetime and never remembered that. Now, little did I know that was the first of a bazillion of these. But I told him that. And I looked up, which is a good thing to do when you're in trouble. And there was a giant billboard, Chantel, and all it said was, it's never too late. That's all it said. And because God can speak to us in a million different ways.
Totally.
And, you know, and so it's never too late. And so it's never too late to remember, because God's taught me it's very, very important to healing. He said it's like pus in a wound. And it's important to remember and process out that trauma so that way it doesn't affect you. So now, for example, I can tell that story and I'm not an emotional mess and heap on the floor, which I would have been had I not processed out that trauma. And at that time, I had this marvelous therapist. I had gone through a divorce and needed help with that. I mean, it was a divorce I wanted, but it was difficult because he wouldn't let go. And I had this marvelous therapist who was helping me. And she was a godly, godly woman. And then this happened. And I went to her to tell her at our next appointment, because I see her once or twice a week and have for years. And what I didn't know was she was a leading trauma therapist in the United States. I had no idea. And that's how God provides for us before we even know we need it. And so she knew exactly what to do. And then the healing began because I needed help, because I did not know what was happening.
Thank God, because that's amazing. You know, that is amazing. And I know there are some amazing people in the world at this point who do help a lot of survivors out of these times. Yeah. So in terms of, were you able to look back? I mean, at what, so did the trauma really end when you were 5? Was that kind of the last time you had that abuse happen to you from your parents? And your mom after that, what happened to her then? And how come her mom didn't know?
So, yes, the abuse and trauma stopped whenever we moved. And whenever I stopped being required to go to the pedophile's house. Yes. And Grandma never knew because she lived in a town so far away. She would visit every now and then when I was little. And when she would visit, of course, I wouldn't be sent there. So she had absolutely no idea, and she never did until the day she died. She had no idea. And then my mom, things just became what I'm going to call, you know, normal. My mom had to get a job, so she got a job. Now she ignored us, ignored me. I never felt loved. I never felt cared for. I never felt cherished. She had zero emotions toward me. She could care less what I did. And who I was with and what was going on. But I want to give her credit because I forgave her a long time ago. And I want to give her credit for putting a roof over my head, clothes on my back, sending me to school, feeding me food. And that's what it was. That's what it was like.
Wow. I'm interested how your grandmother, if your mom was part of that ancestral pedophile lineage, where was your grandma at that point in time? How come she wasn't aware of what your mom was going through?
So here's the stories that I've heard whenever I was growing up, because they've both died by now, passed. And what I have are the memories of stories that I was told around the kitchen table. So I remember the story being told about how when Grandma was 13 years old, a man in the town took her behind a barn and got her pregnant, and that's why she had to get married. Now, the family would tell that story with love and affection. And as an adult now, that's pedophilia. You know, an adult man taking a 13-year-old behind a barn and getting him pregnant, that's called a pedophile. You know, but
Right.
so denial runs heavily. There's also alcoholism and drug addiction on both sides of my family. And I spent 5 years in an organization called Al-Anon, which is part of my healing that the Lord sent me to. It's for friends and family of people who love alcoholics and drug addicts. And I came to understand a lot by going there. And when there is heavy alcoholism and drug addiction in families, there is denial like a river, you know, denial like the Nile River. It's huge, it's wide, it's fat, it's long. And so the whole family to be able to sit around and fondly remember grandma getting pregnant at 13 and being forced to be married, that's ludicrous, but that's denial. And so then I also heard stories that there was violence in that home. And there's also a story of when grandma divorced him and married another man, and my grandpa, mom's dad, shot the man and went to prison for it. So these are all family stories, you know, that I came to grow up. Small town where bizarre things happened, I guess, you know, decades ago. And there was violence in the home. And I was told stories how when mom was a little girl, she would have to protect or think she was protecting my grandma from my grandpa, who was a violent alcoholic who would beat her and do who knows what. And then I also heard just enough that even though I think mom probably didn't remember quite a bit of her childhood, but you could tell that grandpa was a pedophile with her, and that so she was harmed badly by him, definitely often when she was little. And it helped make her who she was, to where by the time I came along, she hated me.
Did grandma have no idea this was going on?
Well, I'm confident now that I'm an adult that it is impossible for the parent of someone whose little one's being harmed to not see some signs. It's impossible, because if anything, their little bodies are going to show marks in different ways of an adult torturing them. And I think I just take it back to this denial. It runs so deep when it comes to alcoholics and drug addictions and families that people will overlook it. Who knows, maybe disassociated at the time and literally didn't see it. Maybe, I mean, there's so much knowledge that we have as adults now to be able to look back and see how these things could happen in the middle of horrific trauma. And if you go back to thinking, these houses are war zones, combat war zones. So it's not just, I mean, I know my background was horrific, but anytime a child is verbally or emotionally abused at a minimum, let alone assaulted, then it's a combat zone. It's an absolute combat zone. And the adults who survived the combat zone as a child, they come out with chronic PTSD, just like vets do in homes like this, completely untreated. So it's just nonstop chaos and denial.
And they also then very oftentimes will go on to be the abuser.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
Or continue to be the victim.
Yes.
Of the abuse. Wow.
Yes.
Well, I know we're kind of running out of time for today's show, but I'm wondering, maybe you want to just tell us before you we end off, the books you've written, the healing you've done, where are you at? And I know we're going to be sort of going down some of those segues with you.
Yes.
But maybe just tell us a little bit about how you've been experiencing your healing as an adult.
Yes, I'm glad to. So first of all, with the books, the book where I'm a published author is with my day job as the International Human Resource Consultant. It's a book teaching people how to hire other people. And it was sold for years in the International Society of Human Resource Management bookstore, which is the leading professional organization worldwide for people in the human resource field. That has been out of publication for a couple years, although I still offer it. I do have several books in the works with this side of my life, so hopefully those will come out soon. And then my healing, which, yes, I love to talk about my healing, because I know, especially on shows like yours, we have a lot of survivors listening and those who love them. And it's very, very difficult for both, as well as I know a lot of people watch who are trying to understand what has been happening in this world this whole time while everyone's been asleep, now that they're waking up. And so the first thing I would say, for time's sake of the show, if people go to qgrit.org, I've listed briefly every healing modality that I have tried and use and still do, that's made me the sane, rational woman you see before you today. And I know we'll get into that in more detail later. And then where I'm at now is I'm a podcaster with a show, the Patriots Prayer Network, where we have a following of 1.5 million people. And so God's given me a gigantic platform where I can now share my story and have all kinds of survivors and whistleblowers and leading politicians at the highest level. For example, I've had President Trump's attorney on, and just, I mean, all kinds of people now that I'm becoming close to, which is astounding. Too many to name. Jesse, I've had Judith Very Baker on my show. She was Lee Harvey Oswald's girlfriend at the time of JFK's assassination, and beautiful spirit. She was an atheist then. Now she loves the Lord Jesus Christ. But for such a time as this, I have gone from that horrific childhood to having a voice and a broadcast where now I can speak. I do a lot of shows. I have my businesses, the International Human Resource Consulting. I'm an independent Lifeway distributor, which has been a key tool in my recovery, decreased the PTSD and anxiety 70% the first month I started. Forgiveness has been a big tool in my relationship with God. And I know we'll get into more of that later. But now I'm a woman on a mission. I'm a woman on a mission. God activated me January of 2024, and I'm to speak and be a voice for these little ones and to tell people what this is like and what they can do. I have lots of resources and action steps on my qgrit.org website for people to understand how to recognize when a little one's being harmed, my recommendations, what to do and not do, including if it's your own little one. And then again, steps for people to heal, and action steps for people to make this world a better place so that we can eliminate children being harmed around the planet.
That is amazing. That is wonderful, really. Thank you. And I really, really appreciate you being here today. Look forward to having you on again.
Yes, me too.
We're going to be diving down some further rabbit holes.
Yes, yes, glad to go.
Always.
Yes.
Yeah. Is there anything you want to, and I want to just say to the viewers, Lynne's details are in the description area as well, on where to reach her. And as you can see, the little banners flying across snail walking.
It is. So is that my banner? Oh, wow. How'd my banner get on there? That's amazing.
Yeah, I put it on there for you.
Did you? Okay. Well, thank you. That's so kind.
Yeah. With all Lynne's details on. So if you guys want to get in touch with her, that's where you can reach her. But we will be seeing you again on Aquarius Rising Africa.
Yes.
But is there anything you want to say just before we wrap up?
So my final closing thought is I want people to have hope. And that is one of my main missions here, is hope. For the survivors listening, if I can do this, you can too. For those that love them, there's hope for you. And please go to the website to learn more what you can do. But that's my main message, is I want to give people hope for the days ahead, that there are things that we can do to make this world a better place. And we don't need the corrupt systems. We just need each other. And we just need to lock arms, shoulder to shoulder, and help one person at a time and make this world a better place. And we can do it. And that's where I believe that we're headed.
I fully agree with that. You know, we've got to just kick that fear in the ass.
Yes.
And, you know, just remember who we are.
Yes.
You know, remember who we were before the fear and the pain and the whatever it was. And yes, it's a journey to get there. We have to do inner and interior work to overcome our fears, transform the things we need to. But it's a beautiful journey and very, very, very liberating.
Yes.
So thank you so much, Lynn. I really do.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. Okay, guys and girls, and I say thank you for you guys who've been watching, and we will definitely have Lynn back. And thank you again, Lynn. Really great to hear your story and another sassy little survivor who kicks the cabal's ass.
Amen.
Yeah, we kind of show them the middle finger. Nee, 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 nee. Right?
I love it.
I love it. Anyway, guys, I will see you tomorrow morning. Remember Dr. York Prince talking about men's health, 9 o'clock South African time tomorrow morning, Central Africa time. So for those of you, what do you call those who can't sleep? Insomniacs. That's a perfect show for you in America. Otherwise, the rest of you, I hope to see you there. And otherwise, Double Trouble with Jesse tomorrow again at, I'm going to say 7:30 and 9:30 Eastern Standard Time. You see, at least I get that right. Okay, guys, God bless you all. Take good care of your beautiful selves. And I'll see you very, very, very soon. If this broke something open, if you recognized yourself in the testimony, if your body responded before your mind understood, the next step isn't more information. It's pattern work. Decode what your nervous system built to survive. Dismantle the story that keeps it running. Reorganize through the body and choose, actually choose, from the person you're becoming, not from the pattern that formed when you were too small to choose. That's Solutions. Link below. The body is the record. Let's listen.